Now, of course, migrant workers are not just found on land. A whole army, or should that be navy, of migrant workers form the crews of small and large ships, from small freighters to giant bulk carriers, across oceans and seas around the world. And our next session is focused on some work that IKEA have been doing to ensure that the rights of migrant seafarers are also respected. And this is going to take the form of a dialogue between Ingrid from IKEA and Ben Bailey, who's from Mission for Seafarers. But Ben, you're going to lead. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon, everybody. As you've heard, I'm Ben Bailey and I'm the Director of Programme for the Mission to Seafarers, and it's a real pleasure to be here at this really important conference today. Mission to Seafarers is one of the world's largest providers of port-based welfare services. We're an NGO that was founded in the UK in 1856, and we work in 200 ports across 50 countries. Last year, we visited over 48,000 vessels around the world, and we support around 500,000 seafarers and their families with either mental health and wellbeing support, import seafarers centres so that crews can connect with home, but we also get involved in a whole range of research and issues to do with labour abuses when seafarers are abandoned, when they've not been paid their wages, when they have contractual issues, and indeed when they have shore leave. And it's absolutely wonderful to be here with Ingrid today from IKEA. And of course, we've been working together for a little while, haven't we?
We do, we have. Thank you very much. The pleasure is mine to be here with you, Ben. My name is Ingrid Sistere. I work as a sustainability leader in IKEA, which is a very big organization. So more precisely, I work in the supply organization, which is basically the organization that handles our relationship with suppliers that manufacture the IKEA products that you see on the stores, and also with the service providers that transport them, including ocean carriers and road transportation.
Absolutely. And IKEA and Ingrid and I, and particularly IKEA and the Mission, have been working together really since the pandemic, I guess it was, where IKEA came to us and really wanted to try and understand who these people are that are carrying their cargo, and what perhaps some of the risks might be in terms of the way that they're recruited, the way that they're employed, and what happens on board. So just to set a little bit of context, there are around 1.89 million seafarers around the world working on approximately 60,000 vessels. It sounds pretty obvious, but 90% of the world's trade is carried by sea. It is sort of half said that without shipping, one half of the world would freeze and the other half would starve. And indeed, in terms of where seafarers come from, I'm sure for many in this room, labour supplying countries will look very familiar to you, particularly from the Philippines, from India, an increasing number from China and Indonesia, and of course Russia. That's not the exhaustive list. Seafarers come from many different nations, but certainly these make up the largest populations. Although of course what we're seeing at the moment with geopolitics is that certainly Russian seafarers are beginning to operate in other areas around the world, which perhaps are not quite so subject to international regulation as other areas. And I think it's really important to also recognise that the average seafarer will be living on board that ship for 11 months. They'll be working 6 hours on, 6 hours off over a 24-hour time period, no time off, and increasingly very little access to shore leave. Ports, unfortunately, do make it quite difficult in some places for them to get ashore. Regulation makes it difficult for them to get ashore, and so that opens up a whole range of issues. But Ingrid, what made IKEA sort of recognise that seafarers, despite the fact that they're not your employees, but why did you recognise that they fall within your sphere of responsibility?
We have been working with seafarers and other types of workers for a very long time in the scope of our IWAY, our code of conduct that now turns 25 years. It is something that we have been working as a company for a very long time. It has evolved in many different ways. Since it started 25 years ago, the world didn't look like it looks today. But from the beginning, our goal, which is also very close to our values, that to provide a better everyday life for the many people. So we see the workers in our value chain also as belonging to this many people. And our code of conduct covers all types of workers, from forest workers to farmers to truck drivers and also seafarers. We do have a general section as part of our code of conduct that covers all the issues that are common across all industries, and then we also have some thematic sections that apply only to specific industries. We did have a transport section before the pandemic. We have had it for a very long time, and we were covering there both the truck drivers and a little bit related to seafarers. And it worked in a way, and then COVID arrived, and we started getting all that information about the challenges that seafarers were facing. Some of those challenges were due to the pandemic, the restrictions in ports and the quarantine requirements and so on. But it was also, to connect it a little bit with the topic of this forum, it was that the access of the data that we were able to have, both from your organizations, but also other stakeholders. There was a lot of information about the challenges that the seafarers were facing at sea at that point in time. And it would have been easy for us to think, okay, this is connected to the pandemic, but we started to dig deeper, and we realized that some of the issues were not because of the pandemic. It's just the pandemic was exacerbating them even more. So it was becoming more serious because of that. And that led us to take a look at the requirements that we had, the topics that we were working with connected to seafarers, using your happiness index and topics that you were covering there. And that led us to revise our transport section and include the topics that were actually a problem for seafarers. Because before we had very general things, but it didn't cover the full spectrum of the challenges that the seafarers were facing. So we engaged with other companies, with other retailers, with other cargo owners, and here also emphasis on collaboration was key. We got a dialogue with yourself and other organizations working with maritime law and working closer to seafarers to really get an understanding and to validate what we had put in our code of conduct, that it was relevant to the topic. And that was a very good learning process, and also connecting it to the data topic. And it was thanks to the information that we had that we were able to make that change. And this also leads me to a question to you, because before we got access to this information, we had a lot of maybe misconceptions or maybe wrong ideas on what it was to be a seafarer. So from your experience working with us and also other companies, what would you say are the most common misconceptions that companies or people have about seafarers?
I think probably it's around about the fact that shipping is incredibly complex, isn't it? As many of us are learning, and particularly maritime recruitment. And so you might end up having a ship owner who has chartered that vessel out to a management company, who has chartered that the crewing of that ship out to a manning agency, who themselves have then recruited somebody else, another third party, to actually do the recruitment from certain countries. So it becomes incredibly complex. And I think also for corporates, and we've sort of had this conversation before, it's pretty easy to sort of understand to some extent where the product is made, because you can easily go and visit that. It's relatively straightforward to understand when it's been put on board a truck or a lorry, etc. Again, you can go and see that, but actually in the port, and once that ship then departs, it can be incredibly difficult. So the risks for seafarers are actually pretty significant. I'm not going to go through all of these here, but certainly I do just want to highlight briefly abandonment. Over 3,000 seafarers were abandoned last year. Out of the 1.9 million seafarers, you might think that's not many, but what is really quite terrifying is that is an almost doubling year on year. From last year. We've certainly seen a rapid rise since the pandemic, where ship owners are either because their business is failing, but certainly for some of the agencies and the owners that we deal with, unfortunately, I think it's a deliberate business decision for them not to pay their crew. And so they get left very often at anchorage without food, without water, without any means of getting home, without understanding what their rights are. And they will turn to organizations like us. They will work with the International Transport Workers Federation, who do some great work on this to provide support to the seafarers. The other area is particularly around recruitment fees. Many of you will know Francesca Fairbairn, and IHRB did some incredible work last year with Turtle, which is an employer pays principal maritime recruitment agency based in Germany. And they did a survey of just under 2,500 seafarers. And as you can see, around 31% of those seafarers were asked to pay a fee, and 75% of those did so. I think what I find quite shocking is that 80% didn't report it. And I think that's just because it is so endemic within the shipping industry that actually, seafarers just are perfectly, they don't like it. Many of them actually have to go out and take loans in order to be able to pay that. But it really is just sort of an endemic situation. So these are all really kind of pressing issues that seafarers are facing, which can have an absolutely devastating effect on them and their families. And I'm sure, as with many other sectors, one seafarer is supporting up to 14 members of their extended family. So it really is, a widespread problem.
Absolutely. And also, as part of the work that we have done together with you, we have a multi-year partnership that we have started. And one of the main highlights for now that has come out of that partnership has been the development of a training course, as you have mentioned, for our sustainability teams and our business teams to make them aware of these challenges. So the question to you, how did we go about creating that?
Rather boldly, as you can see, we called it All You Need to Know About Seafarers, because we've been doing this work for 168 years. So we like to think we sort of know what we're talking about. But we really wanted to kind of pick out some of those key areas that meant something to you at IKEA. And of course, we sat and we worked with you to understand what some of the risks are that you're worried about, and that what you wanted to learn about. And of course, we focus very much on seafarer demographics, where they come from, what life is like on board, what the mental health and well-being stresses are, the fact that of the 1.9 million seafarers that are working on those ships, only 2% are female, and what the what the plan for gender equality is going to be, what inclusion is looking like, but also actually how those seafarers are properly recruited. And then, of course, as part of that, and we do that over a day, don't we? And we spend the morning sort of looking at some of the data and some of the theory, and then in the afternoon we get to go and do the fun things, because we get to go into the port, don't we? And we get to go onto the ships, and we get to go and meet some seafarers and see actually what the port environment is like. So I suppose for you, Ingrid, what part of the course has really sort of challenged your perception, but also that of your colleagues?
Yeah, so a lot of them, but we basically send a lot of people to this training from sustainability teams, the people that do verification activities at the service providers, carriers, and suppliers, so they're the auditors. And we also send the business people, so the people that are in charge of the commercial relationship. One thing that we did notice is that some of the people that are in charge of the commercial relationship with our ocean carriers had never been on a vessel before. Not all of them, some of them have a background in the shipping industry, but we did realize that many of them were business people and were very good at that, but they had never set foot on a vessel. So from that perspective, it did challenge their perspective and our perspective a lot. And one of the most important one, well, I will mention two, but one of them is connected to a lot of what has been said here, is to put a voice, the voice of the people that we're trying to impact and that we're trying to help. So put a face and hear their voices and hear their challenges. If not directly from themselves, from organizations such as yours that work close together with them and are familiar with the challenges. And for our teams, our sustainability teams, I think maybe some of you might be able to relate to that. Our sustainability teams interact with workers a lot, but we had not interacted with seafarers that much. And they were kind of invisible to us in a way. So it did add value to have this face-to-face interaction and to really humanize them in a way. But also for the business teams, it was even more powerful because they don't get that much contact with any type of worker. So for them just to go on the field, go on board a vessel, see the size of it, the complexity of the operations that are involved in it, which they were familiar with the complexity of the operations, but from a human point of view, what does it mean for a seafarer? That was an eye-opener for them, and it did. They thought it was a good industry, which it is, but they thought it was more luxurious than what it really is. And this also leads me to mention one of the other ideas that we had been operating under for a very long time, And it was the assumption that this was a highly regulated industry, which it is in many topics, and highly monitored. There are a lot of regulations governing a lot of topics in the shipping industry. There are a lot of controls from flag state, port state. So those things are happening. And we believed that that was enough. We thought, okay, regulated, monitored. It's more monitored than other industries that we work with. So we thought that was good. But then as we started digging, as we started learning from the training that you provided based on real insights from real people, we realized that, yeah, some topics are regulated, some of them are monitored and enforced, but others are not, or not enough. And those topics were the most human ones. It was, you're familiar with that, but it was the topics that, the social topics, the well-being topics, the mental health topics. So those were the things that are often overlooked by both the regulation, but also the monitoring and enforcement, discrimination, harassment, all those things, the inclusiveness of women, all those things. It's not something that was regulated. So that was also an eye-opener for mainly the people that believed that there was nothing wrong because of the high regulation. So that was really something that changed a lot of people, a lot of minds in our company from that perspective.
I think you're right, absolutely. In the shipping industry is very well regulated, absolutely so. But certainly there are pockets around the world where perhaps there isn't the regulatory framework or actually just the inspection format, enough inspectors where they're able to go on board the vessels and ensure those seafarers are properly supported. And certainly we see that with abandonment, and particularly in the Middle East and in the wider Gulf. And we also see that in areas where perhaps states are just at the very beginning of sort of establishing their sort of regulatory frameworks and how best they can support the seafarers. Because actually it's pretty easy to forget, really, when you're looking at a container ship, that there's people on it, because it's surrounded by boxes and it's surrounded by so many other things. Of course, part of the course, as we said, is going into the port and going on board the vessels and speaking to the seafarers. Some of the ships you go on, you've got containers on there. Other ships, container ships, you haven't got your cargo on there. What's that experience like, and what have you sort of learned from it, or what are you learning from it in those conversations? Yeah,
it's a very good experience. I have to say, if you've never been on a vessel, I really recommend that you do that. Both from a perspective, it is impressive. It is big, just the size of it.
You were saying yesterday, it's like that scene from Jurassic Park when they first get out of the car and they see a dinosaur for the very first time.
Yeah, exactly. And that's how it is for many people when you see that massive piece of metal that is floating. It's fascinating that it is actually floating. But jokes aside, it is also just realizing the complexity that what is behind just bringing a ship into port, just that, it just does not magically appear there. It requires a lot of things, a lot of work from a lot of people. So that has also been very interesting to learn firsthand and to see not only the seafarers on board a vessel, but also the port operations, how big a port is, how far away they are from town. And those things have been really valuable. And also, I remember the first time I met with one of your colleagues in London, she said, just imagining being in this piece of metal for 11 months at a time and not seeing a single green tree for 11 months. And that hit home, really. We maybe take nature, outside air for granted, but there's people in these metal boxes sailing around for months on end. So that was something that really we are, as a company, and I think maybe some of you can relate, we are very good at going to factories. That's something that everybody understands. Some of them are also big and huge and massive, but it's a building. It's familiar for a lot of people, but just to go to that type of environment was a really good experience. And also from the social audit or the audits that we do perspective, it also poses a different challenge. We do audits ourselves. We use third party, but in very few cases, the majority of them are done by our own in-house auditors. So just imagine, how do you even go about doing that? It's complex to access ports. It's on our own without anybody facilitating that. So yeah, I mean, it just in a way, I was happy that we did this, because it also challenged the audit approach in a way. We need new creative ways, which I don't know yet which ones are going to be, but we need new ways, and that was also a good outcome of this visit.
Good. And what's IKEA doing with the information that you glean and that you sort of spend from that time? And as you say, so far we've done the training in Hong Kong, we've done it in Singapore, we've done it in London. There's another training in London tomorrow with some of your senior directors from the organisation. I think what's really impressive is that actually you're leading the way and that you're getting all members of the hierarchy within the organisation to get this contextual training. What's actually sort of then the next step in terms of the outcomes?
Yeah, the next steps is, as I said at the beginning, we have materialized or made more concrete these topics, or the majority of them, into requirements that are going to be part of our code of conduct. And these requirements are part of the terms of the contract that we do have with our ocean carriers and suppliers as well. So it is a contractual terms and conditions that they have to fulfill. But it's not that we just send them the requirements and here you are. We work with very long-term relationships. We have, I think, in average for all our suppliers, the average length of relationship is 20 years. So we do prefer that type of relationship because it encourages dialogue, transparency, and as it has been mentioned by others today, that they really, getting to know each other and getting to know our strengths and weaknesses and so forth.
It's that trust, isn't it, that's been talked about so much today.
Exactly. And we do go by that. We really, I don't know if there is in the room any of our suppliers, but we do try to build that trust and to closely collaborate. So now what we're doing is having a dialogue with our ocean carriers on the requirements and really supporting them and having a discussion on each of the points, each of the topics, and not from a requirement point of view, not like, oh, do you fulfill this or not? More like, okay, what do you have in place? Are you struggling with something? Do you need our support? Because something that we also focus on doing is not only just put requirements to our partners, it's also we focus a lot on supporting them. If through this trust and transparency, somebody says that they are struggling into fulfilling any of our demands, we do have a very competent organization that can provide whatever workshops, trainings, or help in implementing them. So we are having this dialogue, and it's going actually very well, in my opinion. We get a lot of feedback also from the carriers of what's possible and what is not possible. And then on the other hand, internally is also about building the competence, the capacity at all levels, from senior management to the buyer that is buying freight at a specific carrier, to really make them own the topic. Not only that it stays within the sustainability people, it's also important that, as someone else also mentioned this, that sometimes the sustainability people just come and promise the world and say, yeah, oh, do this. But then the commercial people come and say, no, we try to be, or no, we don't try. We are aligned into what needs to be done. So a precondition of this alignment is that everybody has the information and has the competence and has the knowledge to be able to do that. And basically, as our founder said, there's nothing so good that cannot be done better. So this is something that we really live by, and we're constantly learning as well. This is our first attempt at this, having requirements, some of them are quite tough, and some of them will be challenge for our carriers to put in place. But we are learning from them, and we're learning from you. We're learning from the experience, and we're trying to stay up to date to whatever is coming, and to see if it's relevant or not. And then also the next step, we are at the early stages of this work. So the next step is actually, what's the impact? Are we actually helping people or not? Because we don't want it to be a piece of paper. We want it to be something that it's actually changing.
What I was really interested about what you just said then is that you're talking to the carriers and you're saying, can we help you if you've got any issues? And I think one of the things I find quite interesting about the shipping industry, and I've been with the mission for 18 years and in the maritime welfare space, is that actually, as big as the shipping industry is, it's actually pretty small, and it's pretty sort of familial actually. And so do you find that having those kind of long-term relationships has that trust which enables you and that they are receptive to you when you have questions?
Yeah, absolutely. And we do not have a lot of carriers. We have a very selected number for different reasons. But yeah, it really encourages the transparency in many levels. Absolutely. Yeah.
Great, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Have we got any questions? I'm being waved with a yellow thing. Yes, please. Happily take a couple. I think we have 3 minutes. Or 10, you never know.
Hello. Yeah, hello everyone. Namaste. Actually, we have a couple of questions, but I'll try to summarize that one so that you can, answer it together. So basically, we talk a lot about the gender equality, and then I think I saw some presentation in there also. So the basic question here is, when it comes to protecting the women seafarers, what have we learned, about that? And then what are the essential, consideration we can do to minimize the risk for them? So that is one of the question in terms of gender. And then we talk about, during the panel, we talk about how we can improve the overall voices of seafarers so that we can, how we can improve the voices. And from those research and discussions, what you have done earlier with this collaboration, what are the essential things that we can learn and that we can take to make the life betterment for those fishermen? So basically, those are the essence of the questions. Thank you.
Shall I have a go at the first little bit? I think when it comes to female seafarers, as I said, there are only around 2% of that 1.89 who are working on board vessels. The majority of them are actually on cruise ships. But we are beginning to see an increase in the number of women working on board traditional merchant vessels. And you'll often see quite a lot of ship owners will be putting either an all-female crew, if they're lucky enough to have that many that they can fill that on board a vessel, or they will put them on in pairs. But there's a long way to go in terms of the training that's required. Certainly the industry, from our perspective, is going through a real sort of shift in the moment where it's trying to put in place frameworks for diversity and inclusion and gender equality, and actually making sure that women feel that they are safe. And that everybody understands what the expectations are. So there is a lot of work that's definitely still to be done, but I think the industry is certainly moving in that direction. I think, as I said, in the 18 years I've been with the mission, probably only in the last 5 or probably since the pandemic actually, has the word mental health even been talked about in terms of seafarers' welfare, and in terms of how they're recruited and in how they are employed, etc. So the industry is perhaps maybe got a long way to go, but it's certainly getting in that direction. I think amplifying the seafarers' voices, that's incredibly hard. Unions do a good job at trying to listen to seafarers. As I said, we do the Seafarers Happiness Index, where we have thousands of seafarers every year who respond to a range of questions around how happy they are to do with onboard conditions, their wages, their access to training, their access to shore leave. But it is incredibly hard because many seafarers, because of the countries where they come from, as a consequence, I don't think they perhaps feel they have much agency. We end up finding seafarers that perhaps are too worried to speak out because they're fearing blacklisting, which is a very real issue within the shipping industry. And so for many seafarers, it's about giving them empowerment for them to be able to speak. And that's something that us and other NGOs working in the sector try to do. But it isn't as it's not all plain sailing. It is pretty hard. I think that's all we've got. So I'm going to leave the final word to you, if we may, Ingrid. As I said, you are a real trailblazer in this in terms of IKEA and taking this work forward. What's your hope for sort of the wider sector in terms of why this is so important? And do you hope that they will sort of get behind you and do something similar?
Thank you for your kind words, and we're very happy of being a trailblazer, but I would also like to use this opportunity to invite everybody that puts cargo on any sort of container ship to do the same. Not the same exactly as we've done, but if you want, it would be great, but to do something similar, because one of the challenges that we have faced is that we do work with big players. We are a big brand, but in the context of shipping, we are not very big. So we need more on board to do the same. And my hope is that that happens, that more cargo owners, more retailers join and push for similar changes and push for similar requirements, because otherwise we will have the same challenge as Unilever mentioned, that then it's like, oh, but it's only IKEA asking for this. Why should we do it if you have one container on this specific ship? So my hope is that more companies open their eyes to this specific group of workers, which has been invisible for a very long time. And also from the industry, I am hopeful. I see from among our partners, I do see willingness to change. I do see willingness to do things differently. So also maybe in 10 years, we meet again here and we're able to, or maybe in 3 years, and we're able to share concrete numbers and concrete progress. But I do have hope, especially with the topic of female seafarers. There is a lot of going on. Mental health also is being discussed, not only in the context of ocean, but in other contexts. But in this one, it really brings hope. Younger generations are coming up. They are bringing different perspectives. They are more willing to speak up. All these millennials, or however they are called now, that are more, outspoken. So there is hope that comes also to the shipping industry, and that it becomes a much better place to work.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And thank you for listening.
Thank you, Ben and Ingrid. And that was a really great panel, really, really interesting. And if you want more details of the IHRB's work on shipping, please visit our website. There's a whole set of program pages about the work that we do with shipping and shipping companies around the world. Ben is going to be here for the next couple of days. So I would... He might not thank me, but I would try and buttonhole him and have a chat about shipping if you're interested and want to know more. I've met Ben a few times now, and it's really interesting, and you just find yourself peppering him with questions because it's a topic that many of us don't know the first thing about. How does shipping and logistics work? We all use it, but none of us really understand it. So do take advantage of Ben being here. For those of us in the room, it's now time for another tea break. And we will be back in here at 4 o'clock this afternoon promptly. So please go and have a cup of tea and a chat.